Hello, everyone. I was pleased to have Nick Rosa in a conversation about how the metaverse will change our world, with new forms of intelligence, new models of ownership, and how it will expand our reality. We explore what to expect to see in 2050 and why there is no such thing as metaverses. Nick Rosa is a creative technologist, experienced designer, and digital transformation specialist, who previously worked for Google, Spotify, IBM iX, Yahoo, and Atari. Nick is part of Accenture in their Metaverse Continuum business group, where he's Metaverse strategy lead for Europe and APAC. He's also a director at the Academy of International Extended Reality, a non-profit entity producing the annual VR Awards. He is co-host and co-author of a podcast series called Field of View, where he interviews entrepreneurs, researchers, and pioneers in the field of extended reality and the metaverse. Field of View is available on all major platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music. Nick has also been speaking at multiple international events such as AWE, Oculus Connect, and CogX, and his upcoming book, Understanding the Metaverse, a Business and Ethical Guide, will be published by Wiley on the 27th of October 2022. Even more, Nick Rosa is a brilliant visionary and music performer. And as always, it's been a pleasure to discuss with him the ever-expanding horizons made possible by human ingenuity and technology. Introducing to you, Nick Rosa. It's good to have you here, Nick.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I was always very curious about your journey from exploring the ways games can make exciting experience to now leading the metaverse strategy in multiple places around the world.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. It's a journey of passion. I always been following what I love, and I've been lucky to succeed in that. One of the things that I believe that nowadays you can access to education in such an easy way everywhere. YouTube is probably the largest repository of knowledge on the planet, and almost 50% of all the searches that are made every day are how-to videos on YouTube. So you can imagine that it's very easy to find consumable knowledge. And passion is a very important differentiator in the career of every person. It's a way to excel, and especially it's kind of infectious with other people whenever you're passionate about something. I started my journey when I was very young. I started playing music when I was 7. I discovered video game more or less at the same time. So my passions for music and video games went more or less at the same time, born more or less at the same time. I started studying software engineering, but then I soon realized that my passion was in writing, because at the same period I started my university, I started writing for a magazine about video games. And I wrote on this magazine that was called The Games Machine. At the time, this magazine was one of the most important magazines in Italy about video games. Just at the beginning of my university journey, so I switched to journalism, media studies, basically. And I worked as a journalist for about 4 years and a half, and then I've been called by Atari, that at the time was called Infogrames. Is a very famous video game company that was producing Alone in the Dark and other video games. The first Unreal has been published by Infogrames. And then they changed the name in Atari. Then 9/11 happened, and all the marketing budget had been cut. I was curating their PR and their communication. So I got the opportunity to get a redundancy package, and I started being like an artist full time. I started being a DJ. DJing around in the most important club in Italy, that at the time was the Hollywood Club in Milan. I was resident there 6 days out of 7. I had a radio show going every Saturday on Radio 101 network. It was called Music Control, along with a very famous Italian DJ called Ringo. Then I decided after 2 years and a half that was too much. It was a vampire life. And then I went back to my roots. I went back to marketing and communication. I worked for Yahoo, curating all their entertainment channels, obviously music, video games, and movies and TV. And then I've been called again by this famous DJ Ringo that was opening Virgin Radio at the time in Italy. And he gave me the opportunity to curate all their digital channels. Been working there for about 2 years, was great. But then Spotify called me, and I moved to London from Milan And that's why I moved to London about 14 years ago. I worked for Spotify, then the mobile boom happened, and I reinvented myself into mobile because I worked a little bit on the Spotify app, and I found it very interesting. There were a lot of opportunities. Worked for 3 agencies. One was NetMobile, that now is part of Velti. Another one was Mobile Interactive Group, that now is part of Velti. Another one is NetMobile, part of Docomo and Buongiorno. And the third one is Lost Boys International, that is part of Publicis Group. Then I got a call from IBM, and IBM said, you should do mobile with us. We are partnering with Apple. I started studying user-centric design. I was doing mobile strategy at the time. I started studying user-centric design and how to apply user-centric design to everything that I was doing in digital transformation. I had the great opportunity of working with the people at the Apple campus that taught me all the principles of good design, and I fell in love with design thinking. I became a practitioner and a trainer during those years in IBM. And then, this epiphany happened that, the stars aligned, the Oculus kickstarted, were super successful. And I said, okay, I want to go back doing what I love most, which is virtual worlds. And I knew a lot about 3D games and 3D engines, and I knew a lot about mobile, and I knew a lot about entertainment. And I saw all this world converging into virtual reality and augmented reality, and now the metaverse, obviously. And Accenture called me just about that time, and they said, we want you to come and lead our UK team. And after just 3 months I was there, I found myself leading the European team because there was a need of expertise on a European level. And now I'm still there in the same position, and I'm also leading the strategy for Asia Pacific. But now we expanded also to the metaverse. So we added this sprinkle of blockchain on top, and payments, and social commerce on top of it. But it's interesting because we apply this kind of technology both to the enterprise and the consumer, which is fascinating.
Yes, and I think one interesting context that is happening right now after 2 years of remote working and pandemic is we see all those elements converging together, and not only as technologies or pieces of infrastructure, but also the use cases and how they can be applied in multiple sectors or multiple applications. And especially if we think about a globally connected world where you can have teams in different countries or in different organizations working collaboratively and maybe even co-creating possible futures or projects in virtual worlds. What do you think will be the most exciting uses in the next years about when we talk about co-creating in metaverse?
It's a great question, and it's $1 million question. In my book that is coming out in October, which is called Understanding the Metaverse, I'm talking about the fact that we are living in an era of digital primitives. The digital primitives era is where basically the use cases that we are exploring with this new technology are more or less kind of a replication of what was available on previous technologies and previous media. It's a little bit of like the skeuomorphic design of the first version of iOS, where you had the notepad that looked like a notepad and stuff like this. So we are not adapting the new technology and the new platform for the actual unique features of what the metaverse can offer. There are some very interesting use cases, some unique use cases that are enabled by the unique feature of the platform. But I think that's what we call emergence in the innovation space, which is basically when you have an emerging use case that is more successful than others. Like, for example, for the web was social media, and the gig economy with Uber. Those use cases emerge, and all basically the other companies start copying them and then start mixing them, creating the Uber of social media or the Tinder of delivery, all those kind of nomenclature that comes from the companies that had the most successful use cases. Right now, we have kind of a glimpse of what the metaverse can do, but the real potential, I believe, that still has to be discovered. There are some very interesting use cases at the moment, but as I said, I believe that probably the most disruptive ones will come out once we're going to have full interconnectivity between those virtual platforms and virtual worlds. This is because the kind of data that we can access right now on the web, if you think about it, is deeply interconnected with databases and other data lakes that are available elsewhere. So if you search something on Google, basically you can access every website in the world right now. If you search something on Altspace or on Decentraland or on any other metaverse platform, you can only see what's in their walled garden at the moment. So, and the same thing, for example, for enterprise platforms. The problem is that imagine how disruptive could be, for example, for architects or for utility companies to be able to see all the planograms and the diagrams of all the infrastructure that is underneath a city in order to better plan a new skyscraper or a new tube station, and have all those data there available for everybody, protected using blockchain so the IP cannot be copied by all the other competitors. But imagine how faster would be the design process and the collaborative design process for this kind of big endeavors. I mean, building a big skyscraper in the center of a city is a massive endeavor.
Mm. Yes, and I think from my experience as an architect and urban planner, I know that finding the right data and combining those things together and having the right analysis, even the right expertise added together takes 80 to 90% of the time in some cases.
Yeah.
So I think it's becoming more and more essential to have this integration, not only of information and models, but also of specialties and collaboration opportunities. You recently discussed some fascinating aspects about the layers of the metaverse.
Yes.
I know there's some let's say different ways the term is used. Sometimes it's multiverses or multiverses, but it's probably not the case with this one.
You know, it's interesting because there are a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings with this new technology. We have to get the lexicon right, and we have to get the nomenclature right, in order to make people understand what are we talking about. Okay, so the metaverse is a massively multi-user network of 3D worlds, and it's the evolution of the internet. And as there's no such thing as the internet, there's no such thing as the metaverses. Okay, so every single layer that composes this massively scaled network of 3D worlds is fundamental for the interconnectivity and the commerce and the interoperability of this new infrastructure, because we are talking about an infrastructure, right? Talking about metaverses, it means that you're considering only the front-end layer of this new infrastructure, which is what the consumers see. But the metaverse is much more than that. If you think about it, in order to make the metaverse work, you need to have, of course, the metaverse platforms, not the metaverses. The metaverse platform, you need to have the layer related to the interoperability and interconnectivity between those worlds, so that I can bring my avatar from one platform to the other. And this is being worked right now as we speak by multiple consortia that are working in order to create those standards, both from a technology perspective, from a business perspective, and from an ethical perspective. And then you have obviously the identification of the user layer. So the user has to be identifiable, because the metaverse is going to be a big place, and a big place needs to be controlled in some way. You don't want people to misbehave on those places, so you need people to be accountable on those places. So it's important to have a unique identification of the user in order to make it accountable if it's going to misbehave on one of those platforms. And then what you have is obviously the commerce layer, so all the cryptocurrencies, all the NFTs, but not only, because not every company is going to be able to embrace blockchain technology. So you need to also have a sort of a Rosetta Stone of translation between blockchain system and non-blockchain system. We're talking about centralized metaverse and decentralized metaverse. Decentralized is blockchain and centralized is non-blockchain. And then you're going to have the networking. So you have to get all those worlds to talk with each other and interact with each other, all those people to talk with each other, interact with each other in real time with very low latency. And then you're going to have the servers, the clusters, you're going to have the GPU and the CPU and the memory. And all of those layers need to be massively scaled, and they need more innovation and more power in order to create this vision that we have right now, that is this massively scaled network of interconnected 3D worlds. We are not there at the moment. The metaverse is an idea, it's a concept, it's a vision. It's not here yet.
One thing I really like about the idea of metaverse is that we can explore remote places, be that on Earth or even in maybe in space, or even artificial worlds or ideas that don't exist yet. And more than that, I think there is a chance for us to integrate an environment where we not only interact with people, but we interact with artificial intelligence.
Correct.
Avatars.
Yeah.
So how do you see this interaction in virtual worlds with artificial intelligence avatars and even possible worlds as well?
There is something that most of the time gets overlooked in the value and the impact that the metaverse will have on the society. Thinking about the metaverse just as virtual worlds, from my point of view, is reductive, because it takes out of the equation one of the aspects that for me is fundamental of the metaverse. One of the things that you need to think about is that the metaverse is not just virtual worlds. The metaverse is an interconnecting layer, like a sponge-like tissue that connects the digital and the physical continuously, with different degrees of virtual and real. So from my point of view, aside from the virtual worlds that are wonderful and you can create digital twin of real places, you can create completely fictional places where people can go and explore and experiment, places where the laws of physics are completely different from the one that we have on this planet, but also places that are exactly like this planet, but and also digital twin, as I was saying, potentially with data overlaid on top of it in order to do better research and better productivity and better production lines and stuff like this. This is more towards the enterprise side of the metaverse. I think that the most revolutionary part of the metaverse is that the same content that you're going to have on those virtual worlds will bleed into a real world. And that's where the magic will happen. Because if you think about it, think about how your existence, our existence, changed when we started being cyborgs, when we all started having mobile phones in our pockets. Our reality became so much richer than what it was before. We became more interconnected. We became more aware of what was happening all around the world. Many new ways of connecting and interacting and working and doing business have been enabled by this hyperconnectivity that we have. Imagine what is going to happen when all the digital content that is produced in the metaverse can be seen in the real world. We will be able to decide, which kind of color we would like the sky to be. We will be able to decide, I want to cancel everybody's faces today because I don't want to see anybody's face. I want to see every person that I meet in the street looking like Tom Cruise or, Gwyneth Paltrow. I want to see the names of everybody I'm talking to so I can remember those names. If you're like me, that when you go to networking events, you forget the names of the people that you're talking to after 2 seconds because I'm a kind of a goldfish when I go to those events, unfortunately. So all of those use cases are, again, digital primitives of what the possibilities will be in the future. Virtual fashion, virtual pets, furniture will be something of the past. The televisions will be something of the past. The world will be painted with data and information and visuals. So that's really exciting because if you think about it, the concept itself of reality will change completely once this will happen, when obviously augmented reality glasses or contact lenses or brain implants will be widely adopted and available by the masses. This is going to change fundamentally the way that we interact. We're going to be able to summon everyone we want from our family in our living room, or teleport ourselves in their living room, be with friends from everywhere in the world, attend concerts, be at sports events, be at business meetings as we were there in presence. At the same time, as you correctly said, we will be able to interact with digital beings that will become more and more sophisticated. General artificial intelligence is obviously a few years ahead of us, but prediction already mentioned 2045 as the goal date. If you think about what Ray Kurzweil is saying, I hope it's going to be that close, so I'll be able to assist at this, because obviously from there we're going to have what is known as singularity, and that's going to be probably the last invention that humanity is ever going to do. But if you think about the data that are needed in order to feed data lakes of machine learning algorithm and deep learning algorithm, they're very rich and they're very dense, and they need to be segmented and categorized in a very precise way. How can you create something that emulates life? You need to create a system that is able to collect as many data points as possible from life forms, and in this case from human beings. There's nothing that can collect as many data points as the metaverse when it's done in an immersive way. Think about virtual reality headset, augmented reality headsets that have body tracking, head tracking, face tracking, eye tracking. They're able to connect with our wearable devices, where you have your heart rate and your galvanic response. So everything can be tracked, emotions and where your attention is, and your vectors of movement in space, which is super important for robotics, for example. So in the future, those data could potentially be used for AI and for general artificial intelligence. The problem is that there's also an ethical question that arises from that. Do we want those data to be collected? Do we want companies that are now using platforms for metaverse purposes to potentially being able to extract all those biometric data, those emotional data, and those kinetic data and vectors of movement from us to feed AI agents? Of course, one thing could be to use those data to create general artificial intelligence. That would be amazing. Obviously, those data would need to be totally scrubbed and anonymized. But another thing could be using those data in order to create digital gestures. So people that are digital humans, virtual humans that are not real, that will inhabit the metaverse, that could potentially be your guide or your Alexa. But let's not forget that your guide, like Alexa in the digital space or Google Home, they're there for one purpose, only one purpose: sell you stuff or collect your data to sell your data, right? So once you have a perfect footprint of what excites you and what makes you tick, what makes you excited or makes you happy, what gives you that dopamine hit that we all get obviously from all the stuff that we buy from social media and so on, it's super easy to manipulate what you want, what you think, what you like. So there are some very deep ethical questions about the usage of those data in the metaverse. Think about the metaverse as a swimming pool, and you were immersed in that swimming pool, and every atom of that swimming pool, whenever you moved, it's a bit of data that is created. Imagine how much data you can create in 1 hour of being in the metaverse. That's the kind of revolution that we are facing when it comes to data privacy, AI, and what is going to happen with humanity. We have to be very careful about how we design the blueprint of the metaverse.
It's a really good point, and I was thinking the other day. There's some interesting research. There's a really interesting research about how the brain acts in virtual worlds, for instance, and they looked at the way the hippocampal activation. So anything that has to do with learning, memory, and also spatial navigation is enhanced when navigating virtual worlds, and by adjusting sensory information in metaverse and then also collecting data, there is potentially a way to understand how the behavior can be influenced, or what are the things that make people happier, more responsive, or make them act faster or
Yeah.
or slower in certain circumstances. So there are many ethical layers and considerations emerging from here.
Absolutely. Obviously, this comes from the fact that we are evolved primates at the end of the day. We come from the trees where we were living when we were chimps and monkeys. We had to, and our brain evolved in centuries to remember the closest source of food, the closest source of water, the closest shelter were our mates. So we are naturally adapted to create memory as spatial memories. This also connects very nicely to the concept of memory palace, which is a memorization technique that is used, for example, by professional poker players in Las Vegas to memorize all the cards that came out from the deck. Basically, what they do is to associate an imaginary journey through some specific places for each of the cards that is drawn from the deck, and they create that journey in their brain so they can remember better what cards have been drawn from the deck. Instead of remembering the Queen of Spades of or the King of Hearts, they remember going through a bridge and then going through a forest and then going through a skyscraper and all these kind of images in their brain. And the same thing is for virtual worlds. And the second thing is that if you think about virtual reality rather than augmented reality, this happens also with 2D screens, but when we kick in the presence with virtual reality is even more important. We have a much higher emotional response. There are some very interesting studies from Stanford University. If you think about, and also from Nielsen, if you think about the experience that you have when you're in virtual reality, you're completely immersed also. So there's no distraction. You don't have your phone, you don't have your surroundings. Everything that is around you is about the experience. So when you design it, you can design it in a way that has as much focus as you want and as much emotional impact as you want. So that's why, for example, at Accenture, where I work, we are using this technology to do emotional intelligence training. We are training people to have conversation with virtual humans, because having a difficult conversation, like providing feedback to somebody, it's something that sometimes can be difficult or unsettling. So using this kind of technology, we're able to simulate the same kind of emotional impact, but in a much easier way, rather than doing it in once every year with role playing, going to a training center, hiring somebody that will do the role play, bringing people on location, paying for the location itself, paying for the trainer, and so on. We can literally just push a button, distribute the application, getting analytics and performance from our employees on how they performed. And if they perform well, good, they can do the next one. Otherwise, we can ask them politely to redo the test until they perform at the level that is acceptable. And this is super important, especially this aspect of analytics and traceability of the performance when it comes to training, corporate training, where we're not talking about consumer gathering of data, is super important, for example, for environments like manufacturing. Think about planning production lines with engineers that need to be an X amount proficient in order to be, first of all, safe on the workplace and avoid accidents. Second, to be productive. So how can you ensure that your workforce is as productive as you want in order to start a production line, when the person that is evaluating those engineers is another person that doesn't have objective insights about the performance? With this kind of technology, it's totally possible.
So, Nick, you received some exclusive access to a portal to 2050. Before you get into the portal, what do you expect to see? How the real world or the virtual world will look like in 2050?
Oh, that's another $1 million question. I expect to see, I hope I'm going to find something. Considering how the world is going right now, I have hope in humanity, but obviously I have a good dose of objective skepticism that this is going to end up well, seeing everything that is happening from climate change and war and economic recession and so on. If I will find civilization that is still thriving, probably I believe that there will be a much deeper integration of artificial intelligence in our lives. I believe that there will be much more interaction between virtual beings and human beings. Also, I believe that the concept of place will be completely, and reality will be completely revolutionized. We're not going to think about the reality as the physical reality anymore. Our reality will be enriched by digital content, and we're going to be able to shape the reality as we want. It's very likely that we will have something pretty similar to what we have seen in TV series like Star Trek, where you can put on a headset and say, hey, create a 1945 club in Chicago, and you can start seeing the man that is playing the piano and the smoke in the air and the guy at the bar that is preparing drinks and the people around chatting and stuff like this. Because basically natural language interfaces will be the norm for most of the access that we have with digital services. At the same time, if generic artificial intelligence will be invented, probably there will be an incredible acceleration in progress, both from an energy point of view. So there will be a new form of energy available. Very likely fusion energy will be the norm all around the world. Electric cars will be the norm all around the world. And I hope that this is also going to lead to a more peaceful planet, because people will have access to cheap energy, and this will bring also better sources of food for people and more wealth for everybody. Unfortunately, I know that this is kind of a utopic vision and idea. I hope and I have faith in humanity, but at the same time, I know that there are some things that need to change deeply in this society in order to make this world a better place. And I think that technology can potentially enable those things. I hope that it's not going to end up like one of those dystopic cyberpunk fiction pieces, like one of the novels of Philip Dick or, I don't know, Neil Stephenson, just to cite the metaverse, where the world is dominated by mega corporations that are basically dictating all the policies and the governance of everything that is happening around. Let's not forget that this is almost already happening if you think about the kind of influence that those corporations have right now to the actual legislation. We need to find a better way to create a more equal democracy and a more equal society for everybody, that's for sure.
Yes, what I found really interesting, you mentioned earlier about creating those, I would say teleporting into some virtual worlds that are either inspired by our past or they're coming from our imagination.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking the other day was some people might want to train a digital twin of themselves. So maybe if they have a large family or they want to pass some knowledge, they can do that in the future way beyond their lifespan. And even creating this environment where they can still be mentors, so you have maybe a professor.
Yeah.
Imagine having Einstein still teaching for hundreds of years, given its models and so forth?
Well, with general artificial intelligence, this is going to be possible. That's for sure. It's going to be possible because right now we have already companies that are designing chatbots of people that's passed. So it's possible to hand over all the communication that have been made by our dear ones that's unfortunately died, and feed them into machine learning algorithm and create believable chatbots that can interact with people, and even create footprints of the tone of voice of those people and create a sort of an interactive Alexa that can talk to you with the same voice of the person that's died. There are a million of ethical questions that's arise from this. Should we do it? But at the same time, if you think about it, we are already doing it for actors that died. If you think about what happened with Carrie Fisher in Star Wars, or other actors in the Admiral Tarkin, Richard Cushing, that's the name of the guy from Star Wars that died, that has been digitally recreated for the movies. Same thing. What they're doing in Las Vegas for Tupac, what they're doing in Las Vegas for Elvis, creating digital version of the real person. Are those versions going to be like the real person? Are they going to be better than the real person? Are they going to be treated like the real person? We don't know. The interesting thing is that this raises a lot of question if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck. Is it AI or is it a duck? At that point, we will need to rethink about our concept of humanity, and we'll need to rethink about our concept of racism. Are they going to be like human beings and digital beings, human beings being first class and digital beings second class? Are we going to be able to integrate those digital beings into our society? What is it going to happen? I mean, if you read anything like Asimov, you know all the questions that arise from there.
What is a real person?
What is a real person? What is a real person? And we will have to start thinking philosophically about our approach with technology. The more we get closer to natural ways of interacting with digital worlds, and natural ways of interacting with AI, and natural ways that AI will evolve into something that will be as close as possible to real human beings, and potentially even better than human beings, we'll need to rethink about our place in the universe. Let's not forget that the evolutionary step between a chimpanzee and a man is very small. Very, very small. The way we treat chimpanzees is like animals. We do not consider them citizens. They have animal rights, but we really don't care as we care about other people. Sometimes we don't care even about people, but this is another concept. Imagine what is going to happen when AI will be as smart as a chimpanzee. The next step is going to be as smart as a human. What is going to happen when it's going to be smarter than the human? And we're going to be the chimpanzees. There are a lot of questions, and the kind of digital evolutionary step between the chimpanzee and the human is not going to last for 20 million years. Not 20 million years. I would say to 20 million years, I would say, yeah. It's not going to last 20 million years. It's probably going to last like 6 months.
Yeah, with enough processing power can be the matter of days.
Matter of days, right? So once this is going to happen, that's where we'll have to be scared, because this thing is going to be way smarter than us. Even if it's a small step, it's going to be way smarter than us. And it's going to build on top of herself. I like to think about, this as a her rather than as a him. But this is my view of AI. But it's a fascinating concept. we will need to rethink about our place in the universe, that's for sure.
Yes. And how we'll interact with those advanced levels of intelligence, and also using a completely different language maybe at some point.
Maybe we're gonna stop using language altogether.
Yeah.
If we're gonna be able to have sustainable brain implants, which is something that probably is gonna be inevitable in the future, because if you once this kind of digital entities will become reality, we'll need to find a better way to interact with them rather than just speech and gestures. We'll probably need to start integrating technology into our bodies.
Like a technological music, almost, trying to transmit messages at a conceptual level.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, so I love that concept of communicating with music. But yeah, I think that is the way that we communicate is a bottleneck when it comes to digital interfaces. The way that we're communicating right now with our smartphones is super slow. Keyboard. Sometimes we use voice messages because it's faster.
Yes.
It's way faster to send a voice message than sending a message on WhatsApp or an SMS if you're old school. But in the future, obviously, the amount of information that you're going to need is going to be you're going to need and you're going to receive is going to be so high that it's going to be difficult to keep track of everything that happens, especially if you're going to have these advanced beings that are going to send you those digital beings we're talking about, general AI. We will need to find new ways to communicate with machines. So it's very likely that we're going to start implementing this implants very soon. I think that it's going to be as soon as 2050 or 2060. Probably not mass market, but by then many people, especially the ones that will be in charge of very important decisions, like CEOs of probably digital companies or AI companies, will start integrating more and more with those digital systems. Because it's the only way forward, that biological evolution is ended, especially after we're going to invent an AI that can match or be superior to the human level.
Or maybe even augmenting the human capabilities.
Yes, of course. The problem is that even augmenting our human capabilities will always be limited by our biological bodies. Augmenting human capabilities will be limited by what we can process and what we can remember. Of course, we're going to be able to access all those information and processing power in the cloud. But I believe that the idea that many people have that advanced civilization probably that are in space are probably not biological anymore, but they're just fully digital, is not completely far out. Because if you think about technological evolution, is much faster than the biological one when it comes to natural selection. And obviously, it's the universe that goes towards faster selective models and faster evolution. So I don't want to scare anybody, but I believe that in the future we'll be more and more integrated with machines and probably will migrate into machines, who knows. There will be people that will decide not to do it. As there are people right now that decide not to use mobile phones or not to be on Zoom or not to work in digital or, there will always be people that will be against this kind of evolution. But it's, from my point of view, is inevitable. It's weird to think about it, but think about our life right now. Yes. It would look very weird to somebody from the middle age. So it's
even from the 90s.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about somebody from the 15th century.
Yes.
Seeing somebody like me and you right now being on camera or working on our mobile phones or doing Zoom calls and going on a plane and going on holiday somewhere, it will look weird.
Yes.
Right? So it's exactly the same kind of concept. But you can even think about it like somebody from the beginning of the 20th century or the 19th century. That you don't have to be that far back to look like an alien to human beings. In the future, I believe that in 50 years from now, the world is going to be a very different place from now. Probably something that is more similar to Westworld,
We have hosts.
Probably it's something that is more similar to West, where we're going to have multiple realities, where we're going to have digital host, where we're going to have artificial intelligence that is going to be very, very present in our life, where we're going to be able to migrate part of our brain or part of our conscience into the digital space and make it live forever eventually. Obviously, as a copy of us, not as us with our soul. But yeah, that's what my idea of the future is.
Nick, you have an upcoming book about the metaverse.
Yes.
So what should we expect, and what are the people that must read it?
First of all, thank you for covering my book. The book is going to come out on by the end of October 2022. It's called Understanding the Metaverse, a Business and Ethical Guide. I had a big honor of having Professor Tom Furness, which is the inventor of virtual reality, to write the forewords for the book. And the kind of approach that I had on my book is a bit different from all the other books that you can find out right now about the metaverse. Many of the books, including the fantastic Stellar One from Matthew Ball, are talking about the metaverse very much in depth from a technical perspective, with a lot of information and a lot of data points about the technology and the integration with platforms and so on. Mine is slightly different. Mine is more a higher level business approach to the different use cases for the metaverse, and with an eye to the ethical side of using the metaverse. As we said before, the metaverse will be able to create an incredible amount of user data. If used in the right way, this could be fantastic, because it could generate data lakes that can create information that will lead to general artificial intelligence. If used in the wrong way, this could lead to mass manipulation. This could lead to AI-powered sales digital being that will be able to feed you and sell you everything that they want, and to dystopic scenarios for our society. So it's important right now that we're building the blueprint of what the metaverse is going to be in 5-10 years from now, because this is when the full vision of the metaverse is going to be realized, according to most of the predictions. We all have a responsibility of designing a metaverse in a sustainable, inclusive, and responsible way. So these books come from my passion for evangelizing about the metaverse, but also from my the urgency that I feel of making people aware about its dangers, its potential misuse. So it's important that we're all aware and we stop using technologies just for the sake of using technology, because we need to avoid what happened, for example, with social media and what happened with Cambridge Analytica. We need to stop using technology just for the sake of using technology because it's cool. We need to start using technology in a responsible way to make this world a better place, to give people more opportunities, more equal opportunities to everybody, to lift the boats for everybody, and not just to enrich the venture capitalists and the founders and the people that are driving big companies and big corporations. It's important. The metaverse is an incredible tool that has the power of creating a completely new way of doing business and economy. If you think about it, the metaverse enables, for the first time in history, somebody from any part in the world to create a career independently by the postcode of birth. So if you're born in Vietnam, Cambodia, or South Africa, or Namibia, or Greenland, or Alaska, you have the same opportunity of creating a digital business in the metaverse that is as successful as anybody else. If you have the right idea and if you have the right skills, you can make it work, because the metaverse doesn't require manufacturing. right? So the metaverse is a user-generated. The metaverse, as we think about it, is going to be a user-generated economy. Just to explain, there are three ways that the economy of the metaverse work. The first one is a top-down, where, for example, you have companies like Louis Vuitton or Gucci that are creating the virtual goods and they're dropping them into the metaverse for people to buy. And then you have the Gucci bag that has been sold on Roblox for $4,000 and all the other products that are created by big companies. And then what you have is a bottom-up economy where you have the creators in Roblox that are creating virtual worlds. And they're making money creating those virtual worlds and selling, for example, goods and items on those platforms. And that's a creator's economy, a bottom-up economy. And that's the third one, which is probably the most interesting one. That is probably the one that is the most revolutionary and maybe one of the first really emerging use cases of the metaverse that is so unique because only in the metaverse can be executed, which is a top-down, bottom-up economy. That is basically what Coca-Cola did. Coca-Cola attached the rights of using its own logo, so the IP rights of using the Coca-Cola logo and the Coca-Cola colors to an NFT. And the NFT is that technology that is based on blockchain that is so unique because it's attached to univocably to a user, to a specific ID. And it's also revocable because obviously you have terms and conditions that are attached to the utilization of that NFT. So basically, Coca-Cola has been able to univocally assign the utilization of their IP and their logo to specific people on the metaverse community. And those people that are creators started creating new products and services, obviously all in digital, that were branded Coca-Cola. So it's like Coca-Cola dropped the seed and hundreds of new little plants started growing in a different way, completely different from each other, but they're all branded Coca-Cola. So these people started, creating new services like a Coca-Cola club or a Coca-Cola car or a Coca-Cola house, and on those digital platforms. And obviously, the great thing about NFT is that you can assign rights of ownership of specific parts of the item that you create. So Coca-Cola gets paid because they have their logo and their brand on top of it, but also the creators get paid because their creativity is on top of that. And the great thing is that what you can do is also to enable second, third, and fourth generation of creators to build on top of each other in an infinite way. And everybody will benefit from the creation of these new tools and these new services and these new products. So if you can imagine, it's a huge opportunity for people that have creativity and they want to do something in a digital platform to be as successful as anybody else in the world. So it could be a great leveler when it comes to opportunities.
I think as well that the metaverse can be a really interesting gateway for a prosperous future where we can share those digital assets, brands, and also have even a trust transfer or a trust copy of how organization or a company or a person can provide those, so people can remix those things or add to it. Yeah.
No, the interesting thing. Okay, it's interesting that you said that a trusted way. Technically, the metaverse is trustless. And it's trustless because you don't need trust because of the technology that is at the foundation of NFT, which is blockchain. We have to make a distinction. There are two ways of creating metaverse platforms. One is centralized, like, for example, Meta, going to say Facebook, but now it's Meta. Meta Horizon Worlds, that is completely centralized. Or Animal Crossing, that is completely centralized, or Altspace or Roblox that are completely centralized. They run on servers, they have a CEO, they have a management company, and they run as normal businesses. And then what you have are decentralized companies, and those decentralized companies are based on blockchain technologies. So metaverse companies can be centralized or decentralized. The decentralized company is also known as Web3. And not Web 3.0. Web 3 is basically a concept that has been introduced in 2014 by one of the Ethereum co-founders, that is this idea of the decentralized internet completely based on blockchain technology. So the metaverse can be Web3 and not Web 3.0, but the metaverse doesn't equal to Web 3 for many reasons. Companies, countries, institutions, organizations may not be able to embrace immediately or even ever blockchain technology due to laws, regulation, legacy systems, operational structure. There are hundreds of reasons why a company may not be able to embrace blockchain technology. So there will be a parallelism between decentralized and centralized platforms and metaverse services, I believe, for a very long time, if not forever. But the great thing about the decentralized platforms is that they don't need trust in order to create interaction between users, companies, and people. And this is due to the fact that blockchain technology is able to enable transaction of what we call smart contracts from one person to the other and certify the ownership of those smart contracts without the need of a middleman. Right now, when you send some money from your bank to my bank, you send the money to your bank certifies that it's you, checks your bank account, checks if you have the funds, and then starts connecting with my bank, and then said, we have this money from this person, and we have to send it to this other person that is on your bank. Can you check what's his bank account, how many funds this person has, and certify that the money are coming to you? And then basically you have this middleman between you and me. With blockchain technology, banks can be completely removed and the money can come from your wallet to my wallet without intermediaries, instantaneously and securely. Obviously, there are right now a lot of news about hackings and money stolen by crypto exchanges and wallets. But that's an interesting thing that people need to know. All those crimes, all those cyber crimes, do not happen on the ledger itself. They do not happen on the blockchain itself. Those crimes usually happen for two reasons. The first one is, most of the time, is social engineering. So those spam emails that you receive in your inbox sometimes can be pretty effective, especially if it's targeted and tailor-made in a very specific way for some specific people. And second, because most of the interactions that are made with the ledger are not done on the actual metal server that is running the ledger in a data center, but they are done from our mobile phone or from our laptops. And our mobile phones and our laptops are connected to those servers, to protocols, APIs that can be hacked. So a man-in-the-middle attack can very likely happen. And that's how usually all those hacks happen for those crypto exchange and all the news that we've heard about theft and so on. But usually the technology is extremely safe and extremely secure. So I think that the future of economy is more distributed and more equal, and we'll see more and more in the future new kind of fintech use cases that will arise from there. And especially the concept itself of DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization, is extremely fascinating. If you think about it, now everybody using this kind of technology can come together and create a company that is completely crowdsourced, where everybody that has a piece of that company has equal rights based on the amount of company that they own. There are, for example, companies like Decentraland or The Sandbox that right now are decentralized autonomous organizations. So they are not owned by a management, but the owners are the actual land owners, so the people that purchase the digital land, that have voting rights equal by the amount of land that they purchase, and they steer the business direction of the platform, they steer the feature, the technology of the platform, and so on. So this is all doable thanks to this new kind of technology. So group of people and co-op of people can finally come together in a safe and secure way, knowing that nobody is going to overtake the business, and knowing that everything that they do is secure and certified and theirs.
Yeah, and this, I think, will empower people to organize in smaller or larger groups anywhere in the world.
It's interesting because I like to think about this kind of technology as a socialist utopia that is using a capitalist weapon against capitalism. So it's basically social capitalism, and that's probably where the future of our economy is going, thanks to blockchain technology and the metaverse.
Thank you very much, Nick.
It's been a pleasure.
Completely fascinating, and I'm looking forward to reading the book.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.